A rift of crackling Kai tears open the pixel sky, and a warrior from another universe tumbles into a world built of blocks. He rises, blades of light in his palm, and fixes his gaze on the whispered summit of Minecraft. The Ender Dragon, as the world holds its breath, he lands with a sound like a comet kissing cut stone, and the plains answer with a concussive hush. Grass in tidy cubic rows brushes the hem of his gi, as if the world itself were a loom of square threads. Above him, the sun is an unnaturally perfect disk. A lantern hung in a cubic dome of blue clouds drift in stepped layers, as if sky had been carved with a great chiseling hammer. For a heartbeat, he is simply a ripple against an ordered geometry. A being of curved might set into a land where corners are law. His breath puffs in vaporous squares, and his hair, plaited in unruly spikes that refuse the world's right angles, catches the light in a halo of raw intent. He pushes to his feet. The blades of light in his palms sing with a thin crystalline tone, the sound folding into the blocky wind. Around him, the world registers. A flock of birds, pigeons awkward without curves, wings animated as if by stop frame, scatter from a nearby oak with leaves like stacked coins. A sheep, wool cubed and absurd, blinks at him, then bolts, leaving behind a trail of perfectly placed hoof prints. Villagers halt mid-animation in their wooden doors, their ocular sockets round and blank as if surprised by the sudden import of a legend. From the distance, a tiny figure approaches, an adventurer in iron mail, carrying a pickaxe that catches the light and throws it back as though to declare a challenge. He pauses on the edge of the plain and squares his shoulders against an unknown that might be a blessing or a curse. The warrior tilts his head and breathes the air. It tastes of coal smoke and baked earth, of stone warmed by a square sun. He feels the world like a new refrain beneath his feet, the physics of curves replaced by the hard honesty of blocks. He grins, an expression more of curiosity than triumph, and tests his hand. He extends his palm and releases a thin ribbon of Kai. The ribbon arcs, scattering little pixelated sparks that hit a dirt block and scatter into a cascade of squares. The block trembles and then pings, popping into a handful of cubic crumbs that clatter at his boots. The sound is oddly satisfying, an audible accounting of the world conceding a piece of itself. Around him, the villagers mutter. Their faces are simplistic, painted with the slow cadence of a world that speaks in textures and repeats. The iron-armored adventurer raises his pick defensively, ready to declare him foe or friend by the measure of his first strike. The warrior lowers his palm and sends the blade of light tumbling into the air. It shapes itself into a sword not of metal, but of pure energy, humming in a pitch that makes the cubigrass quiver. He lets it dissolve, the light pooling back into his body like a star, retracting into a skyward, moves faster than running feet in a world threaded with portals and teleportation spells. The ripples from the rift sow themselves into rumor, a stranger from a realm of war and gods, who walks like wind and wields light as if it were clay. Miners file out of caves, chests clinking with treasure farmers pause between rows of blocky wheat, hands thick with oats that rise and fall like the breath of the land. Children, curious NPCs who hardly ever see more than sunrise and the same cobbled road, push forward to stare at his hair that defies gravity, and at the way his gi folds like the skin of ancient myth. He listens without speaking, for the language of this world is simple and blunt. Yet he understands. He senses the hunger for challenge like a low-frequency hum beneath the grids of Earth. Somewhere beyond the horizon, in a world unstitched from light, something vast and midnight dark lays claim to the name that makes the villagers whisper. The Ender Dragon. To the warrior, the name is a bell toll. It reverberates in his chest, waking an old drumbeat of rivalry and the joy of a fight worthy of legend. He begins to walk. Movement in this land is a negotiation with geometry. Where he might stride across air in his own world, here he steps precisely. One block, then another, measuring leaps like a chess master. Trees become staircases of timber and leaves, their cube canopies forming perches that invite examination. A river runs with water that holds no rippling curvature. Each wave is a single unit, a lattice of shimmering squares that reflect his face in a broken mirror. He kneels to cup the water, and the surface receives his fingers like a series of mirrors, dividing his reflection into an array of smaller selves. He laughs at the absurdity and the purity of things that are both simple and stubborn. He learns by hitting. A stone wall yields when he claps his hands, sending pebbles that obey the rules of this architecture and drop in tidy cubes. In caves, the warrior's Kai glows in the dark. He reaches out and meets creatures of shadow, spiders whose legs are brittle polygons, skeletons whose bones click with metronomic precision, and zombies that lurch with the determination of bad weather. He finds that his blows are devastating, but the world is built to resist. Enemies drop bones and rotten flesh, dropped items that can be converted into tools, into fuel, into life. He repairs his clothing with leather found in saddest chests. He tests armor crafted from iron, the metal clanging like an unfamiliar hymn against his ribcage. He learns to respect the grind, the patient ritual of harvesting. When night falls, it falls like a curtain of ink in stagecraft. Stars prick the cubic heavens, arranged in grids that remind him of constellations reassembled by a child. The moon rises in a perfect cube, pale and watchful. Night in this world brings out dangers that do not exist in his universe. The warrior watches as obsidian-stiffened villagers shutter their doors. He stands sentinel atop a wooden roof and waits for the first hiss of a creeper, that toothless predator whose approach is a whisper and whose explosion rearranges reality into fragments. He squats to pick up experience orbs that float like low, eager fireflies. They cling to him, transferring knowledge in a way that feels like a memory being offered. He meets those who already knew this land intimately. Among them is the iron-armored adventurer who first greeted him, now joined by a scout in leather, and a quiet figure robed in green whose eyes speak of portals and runes. They speak in blunt sentences. They call him a player, a myth, a trick of the end. He answers with humming laughter, gestures of camaraderie, and then with demonstrations. He lifts a pickaxe awkwardly, then chooses to use his Kai to throw a log into the river and watch it bob along in tiny blocks. The group watches him as if seeing a new tool in the inventory of fate stories stacked quickly in Minecraft. A villager tells of an end portal. In a stronghold, ancient and buried beneath cobblestone like a throne under snow. The names fall from mouths like pebbles, eyes of Endermen, the obsidian frame that binds worlds. The warrior listens and counts possibilities. In his universe, battles are measured by power and by heart. In this one, the road to the end requires pieces, patience, and peril. He accepts the mission as a smith accepts a new metal, not for the convenience but for the beauty of shaping something immense. He and the adventurers set out. Their caravan is a curious collection, carts wheeled by oxen with blocky horns, a stray ocelot padding along as if drawn by destiny, and the low crackle of flint and steel sparking against a stubborn obsidian seam. They move through biomes defined by their own strict economies, deserts like spilled gold, forests like stacked emeralds, mountains that rise in sheer, geometric cliffs. Along the way, the warrior discovers the art of crafting. His fingers, used to grasping intangible energies, learn to fold wood into a table that becomes a bench of possibility. Swords, armor, tools that take on a rhythm of their own. He crafts a sword of iron and holds it as a promise, though he knows his palms could rend steel without it. The sword is not necessary for victory. It is necessary for understanding the language of the people who live here. In the underworld, a cavern of fire and flowing rock that the locals call the Nether. The smell of brimstone and hot stone wakes something like an old ache. The warrior steps across the obsidian and feels a different gravity in his chest. This place hosts creatures spawned from thoughtless heat, ghasts that cry like sorrowful moons, piglins chittering with a commerce of gold, and fortresses that jut like jagged crowns. Here he learns to be patient. He crafts potions from things that look like preserved lightning and drinks them as if to court a new kind of edge. He stands beside portals and listens to their low, hungry hum, sensing that each is a promise of places untethered to the rules he knows. The Nether teaches him that pathways are guarded not only by monsters, but by the architecture of purposes of Ender, become the obsession of the caravan. They sparkle like tiny stars once produced by trade and peril. The warrior learns to hunt Endermen, tall, ragged figures that move with a silence that could strip a man's patience. When he looks into their lavender eyes, he feels the tug of another world, a loneliness bound to a hunger for blocks and the void beyond. He knows they are not malevolent by instinct, only by circumstance, yet circumstance in Minecraft is enough to make monsters of men and gods alike. He fights them, partly out of necessity, partly to test which of his strengths survive this place's rules. Ender pearls fall into his hands like moons, cold and humming with potential. When he tosses them, they arc and warp reality in a little personal way. They throw him with the ease of thought toward distant places, rearranging the geometry of travel into a single, joyous jump. Rumors of his progress become the kind of thing fireside villagers tell to children who will grow into miners and will argue later about what they really saw. Some say he crafted a sword that sang, others that he made peace with an Enderman by offering a block of rare white wool. He wears his successes lightly, not as trophies, but as letters in a conversation with a world he respects for its rules. In the stronghold he finds corridors, rooms lined with engraved stone and the slow tick of a half-buried clockwork. The end portal sleeps there like a dream beneath a sheet. Its frame is marked with the emptiness of need. The frame requires each eye of Ender to be placed into an altar of obsidian, and sighs when complete like a mouth forming a name. As they place the final eye, light gathers like breath. The portal blooms with a blackness that is both glass and depthless well. To him, the end is not merely a place, it is an echo of contests he has loved and lost, the kind of fight that clears the sky. He tastes, for one whole suspended second, the weight of history aligning itself with his will. The villagers hold their breaths. The adventurers grip their weapons as if to remind themselves of the warmth of iron. The warrior steps forward, momentarily the bridge between two mythologies. He turns to his companions and nods with a smile that says the outcome is yet to be written. They look at him with faith that is almost religious in its simplicity. Stepping through, the world forgets its squares for an instant and rearranges into a void of floating islands stitched by a thread of end stone. The air is thin and cold, charged with an unnatural violet sheen that makes even brave men low in voice. From the center of the largest island, a silhouette uncoils against the stars. The Ender Dragon is the shape of night stretched and sharpened, a thing of living basalt and shadow with wings like sheets of obsidian unfurled. Its eyes glow with a deep, old intelligence, and when it roars the sound is like thunder that has learned to speak. He does not move from reflex. He moves because his whole life has been a preparation for that precise kind of meeting. He forms his hands into a calm that belies the storm within. Around him, crystals pulse on pillars of obsidian, healing the beast and singing to the void. The adventurers scatter to topple them, arrows whispering like prayers. The dragon takes wing, circling with a predator's grace, and then drops into a dive that challenges his composure. The warrior rises to meet it, his body humming with light, footsteps striking the end stone like drum beats in a cathedral. He launches himself upward, not with the mortal privilege of flight, but with the athletics of a soul trained in storms. He reaches the dragon, and for a heartbeat their eyes meet, hers molten and ancient, his open and curious. She breathes a line of purple flame, and the air smells of burnt star. His kai curls into a blade, and his laugh is a bright thing that cuts through fear. Around them the end stretches and contracts like the chest of some dreaming god. This is where the first chronicle ends, not as closure but as the hinge on which the next tale will swing. The world holds its breath. The Ender Dragon recoils not out of malice, but out of the ritual of combat. And the warrior who fell through a rift from otherwise begins the true work of translation, learning how to make a legend in a world that measures deeds in blocks and the echoes they leave behind. He has entered a landscape that will test not his power alone, but his patience, his ingenuity, and the very ways he counts victory. Ahead lie pillars of obsidian, the fragile heart of an enormous beast, and the small, stubborn lives of those who believe that nightmares can be carved into trophies and given names. He smiles, the curve of a man who loves a challenge, and steps forward into the dark, where wings beat like banners and the sky has learned a new language of thunder.